I'm sorry, Ms. Walker. You've missed the best window for surgery. Ariel Walker stood frozen, holding the lab report confirming her endometrial cancer. It took her a long time to gather herself before dialing Colton Zeller, her husband Jayson Larkin's secretary. The phone rang for ages before Colton finally picked up. His tone was as lazy as ever. Yes, Mrs. Larkin? Ariel curled her stiff fingers into a fist. Where's Jayson? I need to talk to him. Mr. Larkin is unavailable. Can you at least pass him the phone? Before Colton could answer, a soft voice came through the receiver. Jayson, what's with all the secrecy? What's the big surprise? Look up. Ariel heard the familiar, deep voice that held a tenderness she would never receive. The next moment, Colton hung up the phone. At the same time, a thunderous explosion echoed across the harbor. Ariel lifted her head, her face drained of color. Beautiful fireworks burst into the night sky, painting the darkness with dazzling streaks of color, just like in fairy tales. Outside the hospital, a crowd had gathered. Did you hear? The CEO of Bloom Corp, Mr. Larkin, spent over $20 million on this fireworks show for his girlfriend's birthday. It's Nancy Stanton we're talking about. An Arcadia Tech PhD. Every top company in the country is fighting to hire her. She's smart, gorgeous, comes from an elite family, and her boyfriend is rich and ridiculously hot. No wonder Mr. Larkin adores her. A woman like that is a status symbol. Ariel stared at the brilliant fireworks for a long time before her fingers slowly loosened. The lab report slipped from her grasp, fluttering to the ground. She turned and walked away. Jayson returned home in the early hours to find Ariel sitting alone in the dark living room. He flipped on the light, frowning. Why aren't you asleep? She looked up at him. His jacket was draped over his arm. His cold eyes met hers, as impassive as ever. For years, Ariel had convinced herself that he was simply distant by nature. But tonight, she finally understood. The man she shared a bed with was ice, but in another woman's world, he burned like fire. I couldn't sleep, she said quietly. By the way, I went to the hospital today. Jayson tossed his jacket onto the couch and asked casually, what did the doctor say? Ariel had been complaining about stomach pain for weeks. He had promised to take her to get it checked out but kept postponing it. Whether it was a multi-million-dollar contract or tricky project issues, something always came up. Just yesterday, Jayson had told her he'd go to the hospital with her. But Nancy actually hid her birthday from him? He had rushed straight to Nancy's side, barely making it in time to set off the fireworks. Ariel, as it turned out, hadn't even crossed his mind. Nothing serious. I'll be fine. Ariel lowered her gaze. What about you? What brings you home tonight? Jayson hesitated for a second, then stepped closer. He pulled her into his arms, his breath warm against her neck. His voice was low and husky as he said, it's your ovulation window. You were the one who agreed to sleep with me on these nights every month to give my family an heir. Have you forgotten? The scent of women's perfume on Jayson was so thick that it shattered the last shreds of Ariel's dignity like a bullet. Jayson was right. In the 3 years they'd been married, he had never wanted her. The only reason he even came home and slept with her was because of his grandmother, Betty Stewart, who constantly nagged about carrying on the Larkin bloodline. She was lost in thought for a moment. Having a baby seemed impossible now. Ariel had always been submissive. But tonight, something inside her snapped. Aren't you worried your girlfriend will be jealous? Her eyes gleamed in the dim light like a caged animal's might before it bared its teeth. Jayson looked at her and noticed the seriousness in her expression as her gaze grew colder. After a long silence, he let out a cold laugh. Why should I be worried? We're in a secret marriage. You're the one hiding in the shadows. You chose to be the side character. So why are you acting like the main one? Ariel's chest tightened painfully, and her face turned even paler. The air conditioning had kept the temperature constant all year round, but now, she felt as though she were standing in an ice cave. Noticing her silence, Jayson finally shifted his gaze from her face after a few long seconds. Nancy's mother's health is getting worse. Her only wish is to see Nancy taken care of. Nancy needs me by her side. Just stay in your place as Mrs. Larkin and don't cause trouble. I won't bother you. The way he spoke about his affair was almost righteous. He wouldn't bother her. Ariel froze for a long moment, then suddenly laughed. Suppressing the ache in her chest, she said, "If she needs you, then you really shouldn't be here with me." Without another word, she turned and climbed the stairs, slamming the door behind her without a second glance. A few minutes later, the sound of a car engine roared from downstairs. Jayson was leaving, no doubt heading straight to Nancy. Exhausted, Ariel dragged herself to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. The chill sharpened her senses. She turned on her laptop and contacted Aaron Foster, a lawyer she had known 3 years ago. She asked him to help her draft a divorce agreement. Aaron replied, "Ms. Walker, do you have any specific requests? For example, regarding the house, the car, or how to divide assets?" Ariel paused, then calmly responded, "I don't want anything." She didn't even want Jayson, so why would she want any of that stuff? Besides, she had read online that if she didn't ask for anything, the process would be faster. She wouldn't have to drag her already weakening body through endless negotiations with him. Aaron quickly sent her the completed agreement. Ariel printed it out. She gripped a pen so tightly her knuckles turned white, but she didn't hesitate. Suppressing her trembling, she signed her name. Then, she endured the pain and hurriedly packed her belongings. As she stood at the door, she took one last, long look at the home she had cared for over the past 3 years. Without another word, she walked away. The next day, Ariel took a leave of absence from work and arranged for a same-day delivery service to drop off the printed divorce papers at Bloomcor's front desk. For something as small as a package, Jayson never bothered to do it himself, so she had filled in Colton as the recipient. Since marrying Jayson, she had worked at Bloom Corporation. He refused to make their marriage public and forbade her from approaching him at the company, so she was relegated to the PR department. Her job was to manage the company's public image. Over the years, Ariel had risen to the position of PR manager through sheer skill. In all 3 years, she had never once taken a sick day or gone absent. She was good at what she did not because she enjoyed it but because she had always aimed for perfection. It had nothing to do with her profession either. Now that she had made up her mind to divorce, she had no intention of staying at Bloom Corporation. Once the courier had left, Ariel glanced at the clock. It was almost 10 a.m. She clenched her fists. She had something more important to do. Ariel arrived at Eastgate Prison in Eldoria. Her palms were sweating as she gripped the steering wheel. It had been 3 years. The thought of facing Lucas Sanderson again made her nervous. Today, he was finally being released. She had made a reservation for a private room in a restaurant a month in advance to welcome him back. Lucas was a child adopted by her father. They had grown up together. In the ruthless Sanderson family, Lucas had always been the one to treat her kindly. For over a decade, he had protected her, never once speaking harshly to her. He had always vowed that while others might disappoint her, he never would. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was pale from illness, so she dabbed on a bit of blush to look healthier. To keep him from worrying, she took a painkiller and added sunglasses and a hat to her outfit. The gates ahead slowly opened. Without thinking, she got out of the car. Her limbs moved almost of their own accord. A tall man in black, holding an old backpack, walked out with confident strides. His short hair was neatly trimmed. His calm, piercing gaze swept over the crowd as if looking at her. Ariel's heart nearly stopped at that moment. Her throat went dry, and her eyes burned. Before she realized it, she was already walking toward him. "Lucas. Lucas." A woman's excited voice shattered Ariel's thoughts. Before she could react, the woman brushed past her and threw herself straight into Lucas' broad chest. He caught her out of habit, letting her cling to him without resistance. "Do you know how long I've been waiting for you? If you weren't released soon, my dad was going to force me into an arranged marriage." Lucas studied the woman's face while responding to her eager kiss. A smirk played at his lips. "Are you that desperate? Tell your driver to step out for a moment. I'll give your dad a grand gift." The woman pouted playfully but clung to him. "Don't be naughty. My dad wants me to bring you home. He said he wants to meet you. He even planned a welcome-back dinner. Ariel felt like her feet were nailed to the ground. She stared blankly at the scene before her. The delayed sting of embarrassment and helplessness set in. The Lucas she had known, the one who had always been gentle and thoughtful and who had centered his world around her, felt like nothing more than a dream from the past 10 years. A dull pain began to stir in her stomach. It was as if a knife from the past had traveled through time and struck her all over again. Ari, I don't want to be a Sanderson. I don't want to be your brother. Will you marry me when you grow up? His warm voice echoed in her mind, making Ariel momentarily dizzy. Watch out. A sharp voice jolted Ariel back to reality. She turned in time to see a motorcycle speeding toward Lucas and that woman. Without hesitation, Lucas pulled the woman into his arms, shielding her completely. Meanwhile, Ariel stumbled back, covering her face in a panic. In her haste, she twisted her ankle. Are you? Lucas turned to look at her. His deep gaze flickered with scrutiny and a hint of panic. I'm fine. Before the tears could fall, Ariel turned and ran. The woman tilted her head curiously. Who was that? Lucas hesitated for a moment before pinching her chin and kissing her lightly. Looked like someone I used to know. Someone he used to know. The person he grew up with for over a decade and the one he once promised to marry was just someone he used to know. Ariel hurried back to her car. Clutching her aching stomach, she leaned against the steering wheel and gasped for breath. Cold sweat broke out in layers across her skin. She couldn't tell if the pain in her chest was worse or the illness that was eating away at her. Her thoughts were cut off by the sudden ringing of her phone. She glanced at the screen. It was Colton. At Bloom Corp, Colton frowned as he received the document Ariel had sent. They worked in the same building. What was she trying to pull? Was this her way of getting Jayson's attention, since she wasn't allowed near the CEO's office? How childish. Annoyed, Colton marched straight to the PR department only to be told that Ariel wasn't in today. The day was already hectic. He frowned deeper and called Ariel. Ms. Walker, I don't know what game you're playing, but get back to the office immediately. Ariel's eyes darkened. This must be about Jayson. Had he already seen the divorce papers and wanted to talk? That was the only possibility she could think of. Without hesitation, she turned the car around and headed straight for Bloom Corporation. When Colton saw Ariel rushing in, his suspicions were confirmed. She hadn't changed, still seeking special attention from Jayson. Colton could barely hide the mockery on his face. Where is he? Ariel's face was pale. She still needed to pick up her medication from the hospital. She was still considering her treatment. Once she started chemotherapy, it would be hard to hide from her grandmother, Katie Taylor, and uncle, Leonard Walker. This is Bloom Corp, Ms. Walker. You expect Mr. Larkin to come down personally just to see you? Colton's tone was all business. He has something for you to handle. Is it about the div? There was some negative press surrounding Ms. Stanton's birthday celebration last night. People are questioning whether she stole someone else's man. Ms. Stanton isn't just anyone. She's about to become the face of Bloom Corp's key project. We can't afford any scandals tarnishing her image. Mr. Larkin requested that you handle it. Make sure Ms. Stanton's name is cleared and shut down the rumors. Ariel froze. She pressed her pale lips together. Is this Jayson's order? Yes. Colton had never liked Ariel. Sure, she was competent and dedicated to her work, but she had forced her way into marriage through underhanded means. Women like her disgusted him. Mr. Larkin said you're not to leave until the situation is under control. Remember, Bloom Corp doesn't keep useless employees. Ariel had always known that Jayson didn't care about her. But she hadn't expected that he'd pull something like this even on the brink of divorce. He actually asked her, his rightful wife, to silence rumors about his mistress that were nothing but the truth. A surge of anger stabbed deep into Ariel's chest. The pain in her stomach flared again, forcing her to grip the desk for support. Her gaze landed on the employee badge on her desk. She picked it up and wrapped the lanyard around it. Bloom Corp may not keep useless employees, but I'm not the right person for this job. Her voice was calm as she placed the badge back on the table. I resign. She had submitted her resignation after she had printed out the divorce papers last night. Maybe the paperwork hadn't reached Jayson yet. But Ariel wasn't going to handle this matter, not today, not ever. Don't come to me for anything regarding Nancy from now on. Please have Mr. Larkin assign someone else. Bloom Corp is big enough. I'm sure it can manage without me. For a split second, Colton was stunned. Ariel was resigning? Was she really willing to walk away from the only job that kept her close to Jayson? Or was this just another tactic to make him chase after her? Colton turned and headed back to the top floor. Jayson's schedule was packed. He was about to meet with Mason Fletcher, CEO of Stratos Technologies. Mr. Larkin, here's the Stratos contract for your review. Jayson skimmed the document. How's the PR department handling the Nancy situation? Colton hesitated. Ms. Walker. She. Speak. Ms. Walker said she can't handle this matter. She submitted her resignation. Said not to come to her with anything regarding Ms. Stanton from now on. Jayson's hand paused mid-page as he flipped through the contract. He looked up, his deep eyes devoid of warmth. She came in today to submit it? No, she was actually on leave today. I called her in. HR said she submitted her resignation yesterday. On leave. Jayson didn't ask about the resignation, but he asked about the leave. Colton had no idea what Jayson was thinking. Must have been something important. She hasn't taken a single day off in 3 years. Jayson knew that. Ariel always seemed distant, like she kept people at arm's length. But when it came to work, she was meticulous, sharp, and relentless. That was why she had climbed to the position of PR manager in less than 2 years. If she had taken leave and was resigning, then something was definitely off. Jayson lowered his gaze, lost in thought. A moment later, his expression turned ice-cold, and he abruptly stood up. Approve her resignation after she takes care of the Nancy situation. If she can't handle it, let her consider the consequences when word gets out. Colton was caught off guard. Jayson should have been glad to see Ariel leave Bloom Corporation, so why wasn't he letting her go? It didn't make sense. By the way, Mr. Larkin, I have a file from Ms. Walker. Jayson's phone rang. Without looking up, he waved a hand dismissively. Handle it like the rest. And that meant ignoring it. Over the years, Ariel had sent plenty of things, clothes, ties, cufflinks, and handmade gifts. She had even handcrafted a drone model to match Bloom Corp's latest tech project. But Jayson had never so much as glanced at any of it. They all sat untouched in one of his office cabinets, gathering dust. Only when he was in a hurry and needed something did they ever get used. Colton, unfazed, tossed the unopened file into the cabinet. He thought that all of Ariel's scheming was just a complete waste of effort. After finishing up her work, Ariel received a call from Colton. He repeated Jayson's message word for word. Ariel immediately understood what Jayson was trying to do. Nancy's relationship with him was, without a doubt, an affair. She had rightfully earned the title of homewrecker. Having Ariel handle this mess was a preemptive move. If anyone ever dug up the past, they would see that Ariel, Jayson's rightful wife, had cleared Nancy's name. That way, Nancy wouldn't be labeled a homewrecker and could avoid scrutiny and criticism. Jayson was truly pulling out all the stops for Nancy. As for Jayson's consider the consequences, it was nothing more than a warning. If she refused to handle the matter, leaving Bloom Corp wouldn't mean a fresh start. No company would dare take her in. He had the power to cut off her livelihood. For 3 years, she had done everything a wife should do. From the day she married him, she had severed ties with her past without hesitation, only to be repaid with nothing but indifference. She was exhausted. Ariel curled her lips into a mocking smile and said calmly, I'm taking sick leave. If you force me to work while ill, that's a violation of labor laws. I'll see you in court. She was already divorcing him and resigning. Why should she care if Jayson was happy or not? After work, Ariel got into her car and saw a text from her father, Morgan Sanderson. Lucas is out. We're having a family dinner. Are you coming? Though it was phrased as a question, Ariel knew full well that Morgan didn't want her there. To him, she was nothing more than a defiant daughter. Back then, her relationship with Lucas had been a disgrace in Morgan's eyes. He saw it as an act of shamelessness. If not for her value as a bargaining chip and marrying into a powerful family like the Larkins, he would have cut ties with her and cast her out. But the dinner was to celebrate Lucas' return. He had once been the most important person in her life. Ariel hesitated, then touched up her makeup. She needed to look presentable. Then, without another thought, she drove straight to Sanderson Manor. If not for Lucas, she would have had no reason to stay in touch with the Sanderson family. When she arrived, the household staff eyed her strangely. One even frowned. "Why are you here, Ms. Walker?" Ariel ignored them. This hadn't been her home for years. Even the household staff looked down on her and made it clear she wasn't welcome. "Ariel?" Lori Sanderson came down the stairs. Her expression was cold as she snapped at Ariel. "You really have no shame. Lucas just got back, and you're already here to cling to him. Do you enjoy ruining everyone's mood?" Lori was Morgan's illegitimate daughter. She and Ariel shared the same birth year, month, and day. Yet, here she was, standing tall as the rightful daughter, throwing insults like she owned the place. "Well, if you have any shame, why not move out of my mom's house? Let's see just how noble you really are," Ariel retorted coolly. This house was bought years ago by her mother, Elena Walker, using the money from selling her paintings at a high price. Yet now, Morgan was living here with his current wife, Teresa Fuller, and Lori. Lori was enjoying the very things Elena had left behind, and she had the audacity to act superior? "You." Lori's face twisted with anger, but then something seemed to click. Her lips curled into a smirk as she said mockingly, "Let's see if you'll still be so smug in a minute." "Who is this?" A sweet, curious voice cut through the tension. Hearing the commotion, a couple emerged from the living room, leaning close to each other. Lucas' girlfriend, Wendy Johnston, caught sight of Ariel's face and instinctively tugged on Lucas' sleeve. "She's gorgeous." Lucas flicked a glance at Ariel, but his eyes barely lingered before shifting right back to Wendy. His hand slid down her waist. "She's my other sister." "What, are you jealous because of her?" Wendy blushed and playfully swatted his chest before turning to Ariel with a bright smile. "I didn't know Lucas had two sisters. What's your name?" Ariel stared at the scene, momentarily at a loss. She hadn't expected Lucas to bring his girlfriend home. Since he was bringing Wendy to meet the family, it was clear he was serious about her. The Lucas who once wanted to marry Ariel and was willing to give up everything for her was gone. Now, he saw her no differently than he did Lori. Her throat tightened. "Ariel Walker," she replied. Wendy paused in surprise, her expression thoughtful. Then, she asked a question that made both Ariel and the Sandersons uncomfortable. "Why aren't you a Sanderson?" Ariel said nothing. Wendy didn't seem fazed. She smiled confidently and said, "I'm Wendy Johnston. You can call me Wendy." "She's going to be your sister-in-law," Lucas added casually. This time, he finally looked at Ariel. "I've found someone I truly want to be with. Treat her as family." Ariel met Lucas' gaze. He was watching her with a faint smile, as if waiting for her to squirm. She clenched her fists, letting go of the last shred of hope she'd been holding onto. Meeting his gaze head-on, she said exactly what he wanted to hear. "Sure, family. Nice to meet you, Wendy." Wendy's smile deepened. She clung to Lucas' waist, nuzzling into him. Lucas paused for a moment. His eyes flickered toward Ariel before he lowered his head and pulled Wendy closer, leading her into the living room. "Who are you trying to impress?" Lori walked up with a sneer. "Lucas wouldn't look twice at a married woman like you now." "And that Miss Stanton Mr. Larkin threw a birthday celebration for last night? She's a highly sought-after aerospace engineering PhD in the corporate world. What do you have to compete with that? You're just some housewife whose only skills are cooking and keeping a bed warm. What's wrong? Afraid of getting kicked to the curb, so now you're suddenly trying to cozy up to us." Everyone was just waiting for her miserable marriage to fall apart. Ariel's chest tightened, but she simply set down the gift bag in her hand. "Don't worry. However my life turns out, it won't have anything to do with the Sandersons. After all, my last name is Walker. Without looking back, she turned and left. Staying would only be miserable for everyone here. She left. Morgan stepped out from the side hall just in time to see Ariel's retreating figure. His face darkened. Lori snapped out of her daze and huffed, "Dad, did you see that attitude? She doesn't care about this family, and she sure as hell doesn't care about you. I'm sure Mr. Larkin's going to dump her sooner or later." After 3 years, Morgan could tell that Ariel had never managed to win Jayson's heart. The only time he'd gained anything from the Larkin name through Ariel was right after the wedding. After that, no matter how many times he tried to use the connection for business deals, he was met with indifference. Jayson never once gave him the slightest consideration as his father-in-law. And whose fault was that? If Ariel had even the slightest ability to keep Jayson in line, things wouldn't have turned out this way. To Morgan, she was just a useless pawn. Morgan's expression darkened. He glanced at Lori. "You're not a kid anymore. Ariel's useless. I can get you some FaceTime with Mr. Larkin." Lori immediately understood his implication. Her face stiffened, and out of reflex, her gaze drifted toward Lucas. He was smirking playfully as he held a grape between his teeth, feeding it to Wendy. She bit her lip, a flicker of resentment flashing in her eyes. Ariel rented a 2-bedroom apartment, fully furnished and ready to move in. She signed a 1-year lease. The location was perfect. It was just a mile from the hospital she frequented. By the time she got back from Sanderson Manor, her head was throbbing. But she didn't forget to block Jayson on WhatsApp. She kept his number in case he needed to contact her about finalizing the divorce at the courthouse. Now, all she had to do was get through the 30-day cooling-off period. Setting her phone aside, she took a shower and collapsed onto her bed, falling asleep almost instantly. Meanwhile, Jayson returned to the villa and found that the foyer was dark. No matter how late it was, Ariel always left a lamp on. She'd greet him with a gentle smile, take his coat, and set out his fresh clothes for the night. He rarely came home, but on certain nights every month, he returned to fulfill his duties. Out of habit, he reached to hand off his coat, but his hand met empty air. Frowning, he glanced around. Was Ariel throwing a tantrum? He headed upstairs and pushed open the master bedroom door. He'd expected her to be curled up in bed, silently protesting by pretending to be asleep. But the bed was empty. The whole house was dark and quiet. Ariel hadn't come home. Earlier, Colton had reported Ariel's stance on the Nancy situation. She had even gone so far as to defy him, ready to take it to court. And now? Jayson loosened his tie, a faint smirk playing at his lips. She'd learned to run away from home? But he didn't think it was a big deal. Maybe a little time alone would help her think straight. The next morning, the Larkins' housekeeper, Lily Hill, arrived with Jayson's younger sister, Renee Larkin. The 17-year-old had a striking figure and a sharp attitude. The moment she walked in, she tossed her bag onto the couch. "Where's Ariel, Walker?" She blinked up at Jayson. Jayson finished adjusting his tie and shot her a look. "Don't be so disrespectful." Renee pouted. "You don't even like her. Why should I respect her?" Her mother, Evelyn Cavill, always said Ariel had married above her station. She should be grateful to them and serve them without question. What was the term again? A glorified maid. Jayson saw right through her. "All right, what do you want this time?" His voice was cold. Renee's eyes darted mischievously. "Jay, you're busy today, right? Why do you want to know?" "Mom's at a fashion show, Dad's overseas, and Grandma isn't well. No one can make it to my parent-teacher meeting. Can you ask Ariel to go? She spends your money and doesn't do anything anyway. Might as well put her to use," Renee said coyly while swinging her legs. Jayson hesitated. "Ask her yourself." Renee scoffed. "Please. She's always trying to get on your good side. She dotes on me like crazy, just like those scheming women in online novels. Just tell her she has to go." Lately, she'd been obsessed with Nancy's aerospace lectures overseas, and her grades had taken a hit. She didn't want her family at the meeting. Ariel, on the other hand, didn't matter to Renee. She didn't mind Ariel taking the teacher's scolding. And to please Renee, Ariel definitely wouldn't rat her out to Jayson or Evelyn. Jayson thought for a moment, then shrugged on his coat. Fine. I'll give her a day off. Ariel woke up with a pounding headache and a low-grade fever. Her immune system had been unreliable for a while now, so her body could break down at any moment. She'd already taken sick leave the day before. She could go to the hospital today to confirm her treatment plan. By the time she reached the hospital lobby, her legs had gone weak. She barely took a few steps before the world tilted. Ari. Ariel heard a woman's startled cry. Then, everything went black. When she woke up, she saw her best friend, Janice Swanson, sitting by the hospital bed. The moment she opened her eyes, Janice let out a relieved breath, then immediately started scolding. What the hell did that bastard Jayson do to you? The doctor said you collapsed from exhaustion. You just barely broke your fever. Ariel tensed instinctively, worried that her illness had been discovered. What's wrong? Did the fever fry your brain? Janice gasped in shock. Doctor. She. Don't shout. I'm fine, Ariel said. Her head throbbed from all the fuss. She quickly stopped Janice. Luckily, Janice didn't know. Otherwise, with her loud nature, news of Ariel's cancer would spread across Eldoria in less than a day. By then, Katie and Leonard would find out as well. What are you even doing at the hospital? Ariel asked. Janice shrugged. My idiot brother drank himself into alcohol poisoning. I came to check if he was dead or not. Anyway, you look awful. Is it because of Jayson and his mistress? Janice had seen the live stream. Hardly anyone knew Jayson was married, so people were obsessively rooting for his so-called perfect love story with Nancy. That shameless couple disgusted Janice. Ariel felt a brief moment of daze, but no anger stirred in her. We're getting a divorce soon. Once the 30-day cooling-off period was up, this whole ridiculous chapter of her life would finally be over. Janice froze. Then her eyes widened in fury. She misunderstood. He's making that bitch his wife. When Ariel married Jayson, she gave up her dreams and career entirely. She even turned down her lecturer's rare recommendation to join the Aerospace Research Institute. Instead, she devoted herself to being the perfect wife, taking care of Jayson's every need. She loved that scumbag to the point of obsession. To outsiders, there was no way Ariel would have been the one to ask for a divorce. It had to be Jayson who dumped her. But Ariel shook her head. I filed for it. Janice stared at her, speechless for a full 2 minutes. Then, suddenly, she clapped her hands together. Finally. That's what I'm talking about. A badass, talented woman like you should be focusing on your career. Ditch Bloom Corp and join Faytech. How about taking an equity stake with your expertise? Fay Technologies specialized in cutting-edge drone technology, and Janice was one of the major shareholders. She had no idea about the technical side of things. After all, she'd been a terrible student all her life. But she knew one fundamental truth: money talked, and she was willing to spend a lot of it. At the mention of Fay Technologies, something in Ariel's pale face finally lit up. If Ariel had stayed on the path she originally wanted, she would have ended up in aerospace engineering. Drones were among the most important technological advancements of the era. They were used in military operations, civilian industries, and agriculture. The only reason she had gotten a glowing recommendation to the Research Institute back then was because of her own achievements. She designed and oversaw the development of UN, a reconnaissance and strike drone that featured long-range capabilities, heavy payload capacity, high speed, and automated operation. Ariel's breakthroughs had overcome key technological barriers, and the drone was now actively deployed in military operations. In the aerospace field, it was considered top-tier. But marriage had cost Ariel everything. Now, she was physically and mentally wrecked, staring down a cancer diagnosis at a young age, with no idea how much time she had left. Yet, if nothing else, she had learned one thing. One should always put oneself first and live for oneself. Even if she couldn't be cured, Ariel refused to spend what little time she had left in regret. She wanted to return to her field and focus on nurturing her dreams. Janice didn't understand the tech side of things, but Fate Technologies had a real heavyweight running the show, Chad Hockney. Janice provided the funding, while Chad and a team handled the research. In just a few years, Fate Technologies had skyrocketed to prominence, becoming a dark horse in Eldoria's tech scene. But you know how it is. When I got married, Chad cut me off completely. He's the one running Fate Tech now. I doubt he'd even let me through the door, Ariel said. The lecturer who had once written her recommendation letter was Chad's father. The father and son had trusted Ariel and went out of their way to support her. They truly believed she was destined for greatness, perhaps even something that would make their country proud. But after she got married, she let them down. Janice scratched her head. Chad's all talk. You know how he is, stubborn as hell but a softie deep down. Let me set something up and get you two to talk it out. He actually misses you, you know. Ariel smiled bitterly. If Morgan hadn't schemed to get Ariel into Jayson's bed and forced her to give up everything she loved, her life might have turned out very differently. Just then, her phone buzzed. Renee was calling. Ariel frowned and declined the call. She and Jayson were about to get divorced. She had no reason to entertain Renee anymore. But Renee was relentless. There was an unmistakable arrogance to it. By the fifth call, Ariel pressed her lips and finally picked up. God, you're so annoying. Can't you see my name on your screen? Renee shouted. What do you want? My school has a parent-teacher meeting at 10 a.m. You'll go in Jay's place. If anyone asks, just say you're our maid. Got it. Jayson had just gone public with Nancy. The last thing Renee wanted was for people to misunderstand Nancy. Ariel replied calmly, I'm not your mother, and I'm not your sister-in-law anymore. Find your legal guardian. And one more thing. You're old enough to understand what basic respect means. Then, she hung up. She felt exhausted. Renee had never liked her. Young people were perceptive. They picked up on the way adults treated people. She had grown up thinking Ariel was some desperate gold digger who had forced her way into marrying Jayson. And for the past 3 years, every time she had a school break, she had made Ariel's life hell. She demanded food and made Ariel do her laundry. She always found new ways to push her buttons. And when things between Jayson and Nancy had started heating up, Renee had deliberately kept Ariel busy to make sure she couldn't interfere with their dates. She was 17. She should know better. Ariel had no obligation to put up with Renee anymore. Seeing that Ariel was truly standing her ground, Janice was finally convinced of her determination to divorce. Without wasting any time, she left for Fate Technologies to try to talk Chad into meeting with Ariel. Ariel waited for her IV drip to finish. By 5 p.m., her phone rang again. It was Evelyn. After some hesitation, she answered it. Where did Renee go? Didn't she ask you to attend the parent meeting? The teacher said you didn't show up, and Renee took the day off too. Now, no one can find her. Evelyn's tone was sharp, and her impatience was evident. Ariel frowned. She hadn't expected this. Evelyn had never liked her. She practically despised her. If Ariel hadn't forced Jayson into marriage back then, he would have married someone of proper status. I don't know, Ariel replied. You bailed on her first. Now you're trying to wash your hands of this? Not that it's surprising. You couldn't even have a kid in 3 years. Why would you have any sense of responsibility towards someone else's? All right, calm down. You know how Ari is, came a weak voice from the other end. It was Jayson's grandmother, Betty Stewart. Renee's not a child anymore. And she's not Ari's responsibility. Betty was the only person in the Larkin family who had ever treated Ariel with kindness. For 3 years, she had protected Ariel as best she could. Jayson had only agreed to marry her in the first place because Betty's health was fragile, and she couldn't handle stress. And their families had history. Ariel's grandfather had once fought alongside Jayson's. Betty had always liked her. That was why she agreed to the marriage. Hearing Betty get dragged into this mess, Ariel weighed her options and finally said, I'll try to get in touch with Renee. She had let Renee get away with too much in the past. Today, she had drawn a line, and it had embarrassed Renee. Renee was at an age where rebellion was second nature. A young woman wandering around alone wasn't exactly safe. Not to mention, Ariel had been the one who had shut her down earlier. After pulling out her four, Ariel swayed slightly as she forced herself upright. She called Renee several times, but each call went unanswered or was quickly ended, as if Renee were deliberately toying with her. But 3 years in public relations had taught Ariel a thing or two. She was skilled at paying attention to details. She carefully searched through Renee's social media posts. Eventually, she pinpointed the location of a pool club. When she finally got there, she spotted several familiar faces in one of the private rooms. And at the center of it all were Jayson and Nancy. Renee was practically glued to Nancy, bombarding her with questions about Ashford University. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she spotted Ariel. Immediately, she latched onto Nancy's arm. "Jay loves you so much. So I guess I can stop calling you Miss Stanton now. How about just Nancy? I'm already treating you like my sister-in-law." Nancy didn't seem to notice Ariel. She smiled gently at Renee and said, "You can call me whatever you want, Renee." Jayson glanced up, irritation clear in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" Ariel met his cold gaze and understood immediately. He had misunderstood something. Sure enough, Jayson's friend, Matt Crosby, noticed Ariel and scoffed. "Ms. Walker, quite the skill you've got. You've managed to track Jayson all the way to our private gathering spot. We're all respectable people here. Don't you feel awkward? What else could Ariel be here for? To catch Jayson in the act, of course. It's kind of pathetic, isn't it? You know Jayson doesn't like you," Matt continued, shaking his head, acting as if he had everything figured out. After Ariel had slept with Jayson, she arranged for reporters to secretly take photos. If Jayson hadn't stopped it in time, the Larkin family's reputation would have been ruined. In Jayson's friends' eyes, she was a woman who used her purity and reputation to climb the ranks. None of them had any respect for her. Ariel was used to the sharp words and cold stares of Jayson's friends, all of whom looked down on her for what they considered her shamelessness. Nancy, sitting comfortably next to Jayson, poured juice for Renee with a serene expression. She never once glanced at Ariel. Her elegance and confidence were palpable. She wasn't fazed by Ariel at all. Ariel understood perfectly what this was about. Nancy was confident because she was the favored one. "Nancy, you're not upset, are you?" Renee asked nervously, eyeing Nancy. She was concerned that Nancy might feel uncomfortable with Ariel, the woman who had taken Jayson from her, showing up. Nancy didn't respond but offered a gentle smile. Jayson, perhaps worried that Nancy might misunderstand him, turned to Ariel and coldly said, "If you've got something to say, let's talk outside." Ariel lowered her gaze, no longer wanting to look into the private room. Once they were in the hallway, Jayson looked at her with a measured calm. "How did you know I was here?" His tone was even, but it carried a hint of suspicion, as if he assumed she was deliberately stalking him. Ariel met his gaze, her chest tightening. "You're overthinking it. I didn't come looking for you. I don't care who you're with." They were getting divorced anyway. She wasn't going to interfere anymore. "Since you don't care, then why go to the trouble of taking sick leave to avoid handling Nancy's PR issue? Seems a little emotional, doesn't it?" Jayson's tone was flat. Ariel had an uncle. How could she afford to quit her high-paying job? Unlike Nancy, she didn't have a prestigious education to fall back on. Jayson's indifferent gaze made her lose any desire to explain herself. She took a step back. "Please move forward with the divorce." She didn't want to engage with him any further. She had only come here because Renee had purposely disappeared, but that no longer mattered. When Renee had seen her earlier without surprise, Ariel realized that Renee was intentionally toying with her. There was no point in explaining, especially since Renee wouldn't admit it. Ariel just hoped to finish the divorce proceedings as soon as possible. But Jayson paused. His eyes locked onto hers like he was shocked. Ariel didn't understand what he was surprised about. Hadn't she already sent him the divorce papers? She turned to leave, but just then, a waiter rushed past and collided with her shoulder. Ariel lost her balance and fell backward, only to land in a strong, steady embrace. The familiar scent of sandalwood filled her nose. 3 years of intimacy had made this scent feel like it was etched into her bones. She looked up. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Jayson, however, noticed the faint scent of medicine on her. He frowned. Are you not feeling well? Ariel's heart skipped a beat. If Jayson found out about her cancer, with how cold and indifferent he was toward her, he wouldn't help her keep it a secret. When Katie and Leonard asked about the divorce, he would probably say it was because she didn't have much time left to live and he didn't want to be burdened. What are you doing here instead of in a hospital? His calm words stunned her. Even though she no longer cared, hearing it from him still stung. Before Ariel could respond, Jayson's lips twisted into a slight smirk. Nice little game you've got going. Playing hard to get, huh? She had stormed out of the house, acting like she wanted a divorce. Now she showed up here, playing hard to get. Ariel froze. She understood that Jayson had misunderstood her again. She wanted to explain. But before she could, he pushed her away with a frown and turned to leave. Ariel felt a tightness in her chest. Her lipstick had been bitten off in the stress, revealing her pale lips, and a dull ache started to form in her abdomen. She didn't want to seem weak. She needed to leave. But as she turned to go, she bumped into a tall man coming the other way. He looked her over with a smirk before tossing a comment her way. If you're stupid, you should do some reading. Ariel frowned. Before she could reply, the man walked into the private room. This was one of Jayson's friends, Perry Houston. It was clear he had seen the earlier scene and misunderstood, thinking she was throwing herself at Jayson, only to be pushed away in disgust. When Jayson returned, his face was as cold as ever. Nancy immediately knew that he had argued with Ariel. Jayson's irritation with Ariel was evident. Renee, however, seemed distracted. Jay, did she say anything to you? Like talking bad about me or anything? Jayson lifted his gaze to her. What did you do to make her upset? Nothing. Renee pouted as she sipped her juice. I'm not that free. Perry walked in and glanced at Jayson. He didn't comment on the earlier scene, figuring it was best not to make Nancy upset. After all, it was hard to comment on the situation when another woman had thrown herself at her man. Matt scoffed. Why ask Renee? Ariel was out of line. She followed you here. She should know better than to make a scene when she's got no leverage. Perry lit a cigarette. From the looks of it, even if you file for divorce, she'll still cling to you. Jayson, you better be prepared for that. Jayson remained silent, his expression unchanged as he poured coffee for Nancy. Nancy simply smiled faintly, not offering any comment. She clearly wasn't bothered by this interruption. Renee, watching the scene unfold, felt a fleeting moment of guilt. But then she quickly shrugged it off. It was clear that Ariel was the kind of woman who would show up uninvited. Ariel would still come here even if it weren't for her. Since that was the case, why should she explain herself? Ariel was just a worthless woman. Did it even matter if others misunderstood the situation? With that thought, Renee's confidence returned. She eagerly turned back to Nancy, asking about Ashford University. Ariel had an appointment with her doctor next Monday to discuss her treatment options. Friday morning, Janice messaged Ariel, letting her know that Chad would attend the drone flight control invitational that afternoon. Originally, Janice, as one of the major shareholders, was supposed to attend as well. However, to help Ariel break the ice with Chad, Janice gave her the invitation so she could meet him on her own. Ariel felt both grateful and sorry. She had wasted so much time on the wrong person, letting others down. At 10 a.m., Ariel started the handover process at Bloom Corporation. She had already identified someone in the PR department who was suitable to take over her role. She handed over all her key responsibilities without hesitation. Ms. Walker, are you really leaving? The deputy manager, Alyssa McKee, looked at her regretfully. Yeah, Ariel replied quietly. Alyssa had always liked Ariel. Though she often seemed cold and distant, Ariel was actually a kind person. You've been feeling unwell lately. Have you had your checkup? Did your husband go with you? Ariel hesitated for a moment before answering, yes, I had a checkup, It's nothing serious. She didn't explain whether or not her husband had been with her. Even if she were dying, Jayson wouldn't have cared enough to be by her side. Alyssa let out a relieved sigh. Aren't you supposed to bring lunch to your husband every day? Aren't you going today? Ariel was known in the PR department as the perfect wife. She had mentioned that her husband occasionally had stomach pains and was very particular about food, so she made all his meals and personally delivered them during lunch every day. But no one had ever actually seen her husband. They all wondered how lucky he must be to have such a wonderful wife. Ariel's gaze flickered briefly before she lowered her eyes. No. She wouldn't be delivering lunch anymore. Alyssa didn't think much of it and quickly shifted the topic. It's so reassuring to have a good husband. I now realize that some people's lives are just different from others. You know Nancy, right? Take a look at this photo. Ariel glanced down at the phone screen. In the photo, Jayson was helping Nancy walk up the stairs. In the next photo, he was lifting her up in his arms, completely ignoring the surrounding crowd. Nancy's high heels were uncomfortable. Mr. Larkin immediately picked her up and carried her upstairs. He's so protective of her. It's obvious she's treated like a princess. Now, everyone in the company envies Nancy. She's pretty, a top student, and all the top companies are competing for her. And on top of that, she's got Mr. Larkin, this powerful man, paving the way for her. I bet she'll be the lady of Bloom Corp soon. Too bad you're leaving, Ms. Walker. Otherwise, we could have gone together to meet her and try to get in her good graces. At this point, everyone in Bloom Corp saw Nancy as the lady of the company. After all, no one was blind. Jayson's favoritism was completely obvious. Ariel lowered her eyes. She went to the restroom to touch up her makeup, trying to mask her pale complexion. She didn't want to waste any more time. Her resignation hadn't been approved yet, so she decided to head up to the top floor. She ran into Colton on the way. "Where's Jayson?" she asked. Colton frowned. "You're here to bring Mr. Larkin lunch again? It's not even noon yet. I told you, Ms. Walker, don't come up here unless it's absolutely necessary." Soon, Ariel would understand why Colton's attitude was so impatient. As Nancy stepped out of Jayson's office, the secretaries in the office approached her with great respect. "Ms. Stanton, Mr. Larkin is waiting for you in the restaurant. He said the driver will take you there as soon as you're ready." Another secretary said, "This is the coffee Mr. Larkin prepared for you to enjoy on your way." Nancy smiled gently, her expression calm and composed as she accepted the attention bestowed upon her. Confident and poised, she was the perfect picture of grace. To everyone, she was already seen as the future lady of the company. Ariel was taken aback. Jayson's office, a place full of confidential files, was essentially his private domain. Yet, he allowed Nancy to treat it like a lounge. How attentive and considerate. At home, however, even his study had been off-limits to Ariel for the past 3 years. Love and indifference were so obvious that no confirmation was needed. "Ms. Walker, please step aside. You're blocking Ms. Stanton's way," Colton remarked disdainfully, annoyed at Ariel for not being more considerate. Ariel pressed her lips together. Even though she no longer cared, the blatant difference in how she and Nancy were treated still stung. It reminded her of the 3 years she had spent unnoticed despite everything she had given. She lowered her head and stepped aside. Glancing at Colton, she said, "When Jayson is free, could you remind him to sign the div?" "Jayson." It seemed like Nancy, who was walking toward the elevator, only noticed Ariel when she spoke. Her expression was calm as she asked, "Is she also an employee here?" Ariel frowned. Nancy knew who she was, but it was possible she wasn't aware of her position at Bloom Corporation. Colton stepped forward. "Yes, she's the manager of the PR department." Nancy's gaze flicked away. No wonder. It now made perfect sense why the PR department had been so reluctant to address her reputation crisis. With Ariel as the manager, their inaction was understandable. Nancy smiled faintly. The work atmosphere at Bloom Corp seems to be quite relaxed. Employees can just call the boss by his first name. She didn't even look at Ariel when she said that. Colton's expression darkened. Nancy stepped into the elevator, not giving the matter a second thought. But as the doors closed, Colton turned back to Ariel. Don't you know the rules, Ms. Walker? Bloom Corp is not some small business. Stop playing games, calling Mr. Larkin by his first name. Do you want the rest of the staff thinking you have some special relationship with him? From now on, it's Mr. Larkin. And if you don't want to end up getting fired, I suggest you follow the rules. Ariel frowned. She had always been willing to do anything for Jayson. Was that why when she actually mentioned resigning, neither he nor his circle took it seriously? They all thought she was just trying to get Jayson's attention. As for Nancy, she hadn't even bothered to acknowledge Ariel, and she certainly didn't fear the exposure of their relationship. Why? The reason was simple, it was the confidence that came from being loved. Even if Ariel made a scene, it would only be embarrassing for her. After all, she was the one who had forced Jayson into marriage and broken up a couple. That afternoon, Ariel packed her things. She didn't want to wait for Jayson's approval any longer. She arrived at the Drone Flight Control Invitational before 5 p.m. Thanks to Janice's invitation, she was granted easy access to the event. Luck seemed to be on her side, as she immediately bumped into Chad, who was surrounded by a circle of people. The moment he saw her, his expression hardened. He acted as if he hadn't seen her, continuing his conversation with the others. Ariel hesitated, unsure how to approach. In the end, she decided not to disturb him. She wandered around instead. The event was large, with many notable figures from the industry present. Chad, as the youngest rising star in innovative technology, was drawing a lot of attention. Ariel couldn't help but feel happy for him. After nearly half an hour, Ariel started to feel her stamina waning. She reluctantly sat down to catch her breath. Just then, a pair of polished shoes appeared in front of her. When she looked up, it was Chad, glaring at her with a frown. Well, not a housewife anymore, huh? Have you decided to change careers?